and welcome to Little Learners. A little while ago I made a video about the proposed changes to the Early Years Foundation Stage framework. The Department for Education has opened up a kind of consultation survey for practitioners and other people within EYFS to have their say on the proposed changes, the reforms. So we're going to be looking at that today. We're going to have a look at what they're actually asking. I've got my laptop here. I know you can't see it, but it's here and I will pop it up on the screen as well so you can see what I'm seeing. I did actually film this video a couple of days ago, and then when I went to edit it, realised that the first few minutes of footage was missing. So I'm going to do a bit of that now, and then at some point in this video I will look like I've had a costume change, but that's just because we're going to revert back to the original footage. So just so you're aware that's going to happen. Before we get started, don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you can see future videos. And if you do find this video helpful, give it a like as it really helps out the channel. I'm going to be asking a few questions during this video because I really want your opinions, so please do leave your comments below. Okay, so when you first go to the survey consultation page, which I will link in the description box below by the way if you want to do it, it looks like this. So Early Years Foundation Stage reforms, there's a bit of an overview, why they are consulting, and then you click on online survey to give your views. For the purpose of this video, we're just going to skip straight to page 2 because page 1 asked for my personal details and you don't get to see those. So page 2, setting the context. This page explains what is going on, basically. It talks a bit about what early years is. It then goes on to explain that too many children still finish the reception year without the language and early literacy skills they need to thrive, which the evidence shows are critical areas for building a foundation for later success. So children are finishing reception, finishing the early years stage, and they're moving on to the national curriculum in year 1 without the literacy skills that they need. Not all children, obviously, but apparently they're finding that for many children this is a gap, and I think this is something that a lot of practitioners see, and there are a lot of reasons for that. I think that's an entirely different video on its own. If you think you have some ideas about why there is this gap in literacy skills at the end of EYFS, then do write them in the comments below, because I think it's really important that we all kind of have a conversation about this and get as many practitioners talking about it as possible. So the key aim of these reforms is to improve outcomes at age 5, particularly in early literacy. It also aims to reduce teacher workload so teachers can spend more time interacting with children in their care, which I find very interesting and doubtful. But I don't want to be super negative about this. Obviously, they may have figured out a way to reduce teacher workload. However, I'm sure a lot of you watching will know that this is a line that is used so often and we never really see the benefits. So it could work this time, but I think a lot of practitioners would be quite doubtful about that. Okay, so then we move on to page 3, and this explains what the Early Years Foundation Stage framework is. I'm not going to go over all of that now because a lot of you watching will already know, and if you don't know, I will link my video in the description box below that explains all about what the Early Years Foundation Stage is and what all of the different areas are as well. And I think we can just move on to the next page. So page 4, background to the proposed changes. So there is a lot to read before we get to any questions here, but I suppose it is really important that everyone is on the same page when they start this survey. So the government did a primary assessment consultation, which was published in September 2017. They consulted early years experts, practitioners and academics to develop proposals intended to make all of the ELGs clearer so that it's easier for teachers to make more accurate judgments, which I think some may read as a criticism on teachers not making accurate judgments. So interested to know how you would take that. Focus on strengthening language and vocabulary, so that early literacy again, particularly supporting disadvantaged children, strengthen literacy and numeracy outcomes to have a good grasp of these areas in preparation for year 1. That one, I know that aggravates a lot of early years practitioners because there is always so much emphasis on preparing children for year 1, which kind of sometimes makes it feel like early years isn't respected enough. because it's all to do with getting onto the national curriculum and getting to year one, whereas actually the work that children do in early years is very important in its own right. So again, interested to know if you feel that way or if you feel differently. So there's a little paragraph here about reducing teacher workload. They considered different approaches to assessment moderation, streamlined assessment guidance, and strengthened the important messages that teachers should use their professional judgment and not rely on unnecessary evidence to justify their assessments. Now, this one gets to me, to be honest, because yes, teachers should just be able to use their own professional judgment. Teachers have been through lots of training. Many teachers are extremely experienced, and yet when it comes to moderation, especially if you're being moderated at your school, so if the moderators come to you, you have to give a lot of evidence. You can't just say, well, I'm a trained teacher, I know that this level is right for this child. You have to provide so much evidence. We're constantly taking observations. And so just saying that we can reduce teacher workload by taking away the expectation that you should have evidence won't work in practice unless everyone is completely on board with this. And when it comes to delivering assessments and levels, and when it comes to moderation, if we're still expected to bring all of that evidence, then that's not going to reduce teacher workload at all. So in July 2018, they published a revised EYFS framework. I made a video about that, so that is linked below. And they piloted it during the academic year 2018-2019 with 24 schools. So following this consultation, as long as everything goes to plan, the new revised EYFS framework will be statutory from September 2021, although some schools may opt to start doing it from September 2020. There's also a bit here about what is not included, so no changes to the characteristics of effective learning. The terms prime and specific will still remain, as will the names of the 7 areas of learning, which is interesting because originally there were some slight tweaks to that. They're not proposing to change the good level of development measure, and the progress check at age 2 and the reception baseline assessment are not in the scope of this consultation. So let's move on. We get to page 5, and page 5 is where we get our very first question, which I believe is where my original footage starts. So past Amy, over to you. Okay, so on page 5 we finally get to our first question. Please give us your views on whether the activities described in each of the proposed educational programme summaries support children's learning and development throughout the EYFS. So here we have proposed educational programmes, and we've got a paragraph for each of the areas. Next, we have the early learning goals, and we have another question. Please give us your views on whether the proposed ELGs are clear, specific, and easy to understand. So we've got the proposed ELGs here. So they will be slightly different to the ones that currently exist. They've also included rationale for change, so explaining why they are making these proposed changes, or want to make these proposed changes. And then it goes on to ask, please give us your views on whether the proposed ELGs contribute to a well-rounded assessment of children's development at the end of reception year, which I think is a very interesting question and an important one as well, because I think a lot of practitioners will have a view on this, of whether or not the ELGs, or the proposed ones, do give you an idea of the whole child. On page 7, we are looking at things like moderation and judgment criteria. And the question is, what are your views on removing the local authority statutory element of the early years foundation stage profile moderation? Which is interesting because I think that for a lot of schools that's the only moderation that they get, and so that might leave them without any. For other schools, especially those who are in academies now, multi-academies, and they have other schools that they work with, they can do moderation all the time, so they might not feel like local authority moderation is necessary for them, so that's quite interesting. What are your views on whether removing the local authority statutory element of the EYFSP moderation will help to reduce teacher workload? So here we have our first teacher workload question. Will removing the statutory element of moderation reduce teacher workload? Of course, you have to prepare things to take to moderation, so I'd be really interested to know actually in the comments what you think about this. I'm really interested to know, so please do let me know in the comments below. What alternatives to local authority statutory moderation do you think could help to ensure consistency of the EYFS judgments across the ELGs? So if they take away the local authority moderation, what do you think they could do instead? Because we need to make sure that there's consistency. What are your views on the proposal to remove the exceeded judgment from the early years foundation stage profile? Very interesting. Of course, these proposed changes, if and when they happen, won't become statutory until September 2021. So there are a lot of schools and other early years providers who are still using the exceeding descriptors, and I just recently made a video about exceeding descriptors for any of you who are interested. And so removing the exceeding judgment, would that be helpful or a hindrance, I wonder? For a little bit of background on this proposed change, we would like to hear your views on our proposal to remove the exceeded criteria so that teachers can prioritise their support to children who are emerging and consolidate learning and development for children who are on track for expected levels of development. Teachers will still be required to stretch more able students, to support them to excel and provide a narrative for parents and the Year 1 teacher, but they will not be required to record the exceeded level to complete the profile for national data purposes. So, the idea behind this, and of course you're more than welcome to go and read this properly yourself, I'm just reading little bits for you, but the thinking behind this is that if the exceeding descriptor is removed, then teachers will have more time to close the gap between emerging and expected. I would love to know what you think about this, and I may even make a video about this because I can feel some strong opinions forming in my head right now. So do let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that would be a good idea or not? On page 8 we have safeguarding and welfare. Should the requirement in the EYFS framework to promote the good health of children also include oral health? Evidence published by Public Health England suggests that more than 1 in 5 children aged 5 have experienced tooth decay, with more than 1 or more teeth being extracted or filled by age 5. Gosh, that's quite shocking to me. The promotion of good oral health in the early years can help reduce the incidences of tooth decay and hospital admissions. We propose including the promotion of good oral health as part of the overall promotion of good health, as set out in the EYFS framework. This does not mean supervised toothbrushing. Now I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of early years providers already promote good oral health. I know that a lot of nurseries and receptions will talk about teeth brushing and how important it is, not necessarily standing with children and teach them how to brush their teeth, because, and you may not agree with me on this, but that is perhaps not the job of the teacher. But I think certainly most practitioners would already promote good oral health, so maybe for a lot of practitioners and providers this wouldn't be a massive change because they're already doing it, but interesting nonetheless. Is it putting more responsibility on schools where schools already have so much responsibility on them? On page 9 we have equalities assessment. Please provide any representations and or evidence of the potential impact of our proposals on people with protected characteristics for the purpose of the Public Sector Equality Duty, Equality Act 2010. And I really urge you to think about this one, because if you do think that there is anything there where it's not going to work for certain children, particularly I'm thinking of our SEN children, children with disabilities, have a think about your children and see if you think these reforms will be better for them, the same, or if you think there might be some problems. Okay, on page 10, it asks you to submit your response. I'm not going to do that because I haven't actually filled it out, I've just been going through it with you, so I'm going to go back and fill it out myself. I urge you to do the same if you have not done so already. As I said, I will link in the description box below how you can get to this survey. Obviously, you'll need quite a chunk of time to be able to look at this and really consider everything that's written in it. There's a lot to read, and there may equally be a lot to write as well, depending on what your opinions are of all of this. I'd love to start a bit of a conversation in the comments about these questions and these reforms, so please do let me know what your opinions are of all of these and if there's anything that really stands out to you. Is there anything that you wish was included and you're surprised that it wasn't. As I said, this survey closes on the 31st of January 2020, so there is still time to go and fill it out. Obviously, when the results from this consultation come out, anything that's reported comes out, I will make another video and let you know. But for now, don't forget to give this video a like, as it really helps out the channel. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss that future video about what the results are of this consultation. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.